Hello, geometry students. Today I'm going to teach you how to find a volume of a cylinder. Cylinders are kind of like prisms, but they have two bases. And the bases are circles. So on the left you see we have a stack of quarters. The volume formula for a prism and the volume formula for a cylinder are both V is equal to BH. The base would be the area of one of these quarters. Do you know what the volume formula is for a circle? Hopefully you have access to your word wall. And if you don't, I'm going to write it here for you, hopefully. You remember that volume, that this makes sense. This is because the base of it is a circle. So you find the area of one using that, and what that would do is that would just give you the top layer of that quarter. And then we would see how many quarters are actually stacked, and that is our height. Okay, so if the area of one quarter, let's just say, is 10. And then this is stacked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It would be 10 times 12. Okay? But now how does that apply to anything else? That's just going to show you the basics. All right, so let's go on. Before we get started, I want to just ask you, which of these two cylinders do you think has more volume or has greater volume? The one on the left or the one on the right? Let's pretend we have a soup that we want to sell. And soup cans are typically circular and cylindrical. Okay, the bases are circles and they're cylinders. So there are other factors that go into it, but one of the things you might want to think about is how much soup it holds. You might want to put more in there, you might want to put less. So the question is, which one do you think? Okay? Hopefully you've decided which one you think holds more. And what we're going to do is we are going to find the volume of each one. Remember that the formula is V is equal to BH. And just to practice, the base is this circle, but when it's BH, there are two bases. Do you see there are two? Now, the height is going to be how far apart those bases are. And that's this right here. That's how far apart. So H is equal to 4. I'm going to put H is equal to 4. And you can see there's an H right here. We're going to substitute that with 4. The base part is the most interesting part of this formula. Some people just want to put a 3 because they see a 3 on the base. But you have to remember that the base, let me do that right here. The base is pi r squared. Why? Because it's a circle. The radius is, let's see, there we go. The radius is this line right here, and it is 3. So wherever we see that r is 3. Now pi is interesting. Pi is a set number. It just has a lot of decimals, so we don't write it out. It is 3.14159, and it goes on to infinity. It never stops. Since we can't write that number easily, we just call it pi. But you never substitute pi with anything else unless it's going to be that 3.14 value. Okay? So let's continue finding the area of the base. So this is pi. And then my 3 is my radius. And because there's nothing in between, that means times. Now, be careful. Don't say that 3 squared is 6, because that's 3 times 2. So when we simplify now, we know that 3 times 3 is 9. And we put the pi at the end generally once we've simplified. Well, all of this is our base. Now, if you wanted to, you could write the whole formula here, pi r squared h and then do pi 3 squared h, that's still 9 pi. So I like to do the 9 pi separately and then come back in. Remember that we had this h equals 4. And so we can put that 4 in right there. And now when you have numbers, go ahead and multiply them. You don't have to put there's no specific order with the multiplication. That's 36. But remember that there's still a pi. This is the exact answers. Now, volume is measured in cubic units, but we don't know what those units are. We don't know if this is inches or centimeters. We have no idea. So we're just going to leave it as 36 pi. And later I'll show you how to get a decimal. But for right now, let's do the volume formula for the cylinder on the right. Again, the volume formula is BH, and the reason it's BH is because we have two bases. To find the height, you're going to find the number that connects those two bases, and that's 9. So I'm just going to make sure. I always do the same thing. Oops. There we go. H is equal to 9. Now, do you remember how to find the B? Remember how to find the base. The base, let me do that right here, is pi r squared. Actually, I don't like it there. Maybe I can do it here. Oops. And then one more time, let's find that r. That r is the radius. Now the radius, I forgot to be a little more specific, it goes from one end of the circle to the center. Okay? There we go. So my radius is 2. So this is where I put my radius. So it's going to be pi times, remember there's nothing there, but it's times, and it's going to be 2 squared. You always do squareds first, order of operations, exponents, and 2 times 2 is 4, so the base is 4 pi. That can come up here where our B is. So this number goes right in there. So put your equal sign. The volume's still on the left. We don't know what the volume is, but it's 4 pi. And do you remember what the height is? The height is 9. Oops. So again, with multiplication, you can do in any order. 9 times 4 is 36, but remember there is a pi. And again, this is the exact answer. Later we'll get an approximation. So when we asked which one has greater volume, well, neither one has greater volume. They have the same volume. They're exactly the same. So maybe we should just write these cylinders have the same volume. There we go. Let's look at the general formula. So here's the key idea. Remember that you've got your V is equal to BH. That's because there's two bases. They didn't color the bottom base. And then what do you use for the base? Well, over here on the left it says steady tip pi r squared. So you can do V is equal to BH and calculate B and calculate H, or find H and put them together. Or you can just substitute B, which is pi r squared. Again, that's for the circle, and then the height. So either way you want to do it. Separately, put it together, or put it all together, then plug in. All right, we've got 2 examples, and then I'm going to ask you to try 3 on your own. So let's find the volume of this cylinder. The volume formula, do you remember the volume formula? It is BH, and the reason is because there's 2 circles. Now again, the circles are the bases. There's one here, there's one here. The height is going to be how far apart they are, and that is 6. Because that's how far apart those two circles are. And the number one error that people do make is they say that the base is 3. Well, the base is not 3 because the base is a circle, so you have to change it and write a formula. Okay, so the base of the circle, the formula would be pi r squared. And this 3 stops at the center, so that would be my radius. Okay, and 3 squared is not 6, but 9, because 3 times 3 is 9. And remember, there's a pi after that. Where does this go? This goes into my formula where my b is. Okay, my height. Do you remember what the height is? The height is 6. Okay, we found that first. And now multiplying 9 times 6, you get 54 pi. This is the exact answer. Sometimes we ask for the exact answer. But when we're thinking about the soup, 54 pi doesn't really make a ton of sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab Desmos. I'm going to go to Desmos, and I'm going to type in 54 pi, and I'm going to insert it here. Okay, so I went over to Desmos. I typed in 54 pi. One of my students taught me how to insert pi. You can just type in pi. So what I actually typed in was 54, and then I brought up the little keyboard and I typed in pi like that. It doesn't have an E, and then it brings up this. Now, in the instructions, they said to the nearest tenth. Okay, and I'll show you where it says that. It says right here. Tenth is 1 decimal place. So 1 decimal place would be a 6. So if we look at the numbers, I'm going to draw a line. The number after the 6 is 4. That is not strong enough to bring up the 6 to a 7, a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the approximate is going to be, and I'm going to put it here, I suppose, would be 169.6. This is not exact because I chopped off all these decimals, so this is an approximation. Like that. Okay. All right, so I think this is going to be our last example, and then I'm going to have you try and submit, and then when you submit your pictures, I can see what you're getting and then give you feedback. So remember to start with the volume formula. The bases are the two circles. The height is how far apart they are. So h is equal to 8. Do you remember the base formula? Because this is a circle. I'm going to do it right here. Do you remember the formula? Pi r squared. Now, this one's a little tricky because this 8 does not stop in the middle of the circle. I can see that because the line actually goes all the way across. That's what we call the diameter. For the radius, we would want only this part, only from the edge to the center. Well, doesn't it make sense that each one would have to be 4? Because 4 and 4 together would make that 8. Okay, so the radius is the 4. We're going to square 4. That would be a good comment if you were going like, Miss Lara, I don't get that part. Then you could email me or comment. Okay, remember that 4 squared means 4 times 4, so that's 16. And of course, we still have a pi. Leave it there. That is what goes in for that base. So it's 16 pi. And then do you remember what the height is? It is 8. So 16 times 8, I think that's 132. And we still have pi. This is the exact answer. Okay? In this problem, it is not asking me for the exact. It is asking me to the nearest tenth. So that means I need to get a calculator and plug that in. Okay, so let me go do that and grab it. Okay, so I went and I grabbed Desmos, and I just checked 16 times 8, and guess what? That I made a mistake. It is not 132, it is 128, so I'm glad I checked that. 128 pi. And then I said, okay, give me a decimal again. For that pi, I typed in 128, and then I typed in pi, and it gave me this. Now the nearest tenth would be 402.1, and then after the 1 is a 2. So that's going to stay 402.1 because that 2 is not powerful enough. Okay. And this really should be 2 squiggly equals because it is not equal. It's an approximation. It means I cut off some of the decimals. All right, here are the 3 I want you to try. Write them on paper and upload them into Google Classroom, and then I can give you feedback. Bye now.